Hey guys. Yes, before you even ask, I am wearing my jammies. If you joined our office hours, you would have seen this last week because Monday was pajama day in office hours. So you should join office hours. It's a lot of fun. Come say hi. Come see the crazy fun stuff that we're doing. Especially if you have questions. It's not just for fun, but if you do have questions, come and join. Sometimes kids will come in, ask a question, leave, or they'll hang out for the entire hour. So, totally up to you guys. But don't miss out on the next fun thing that we do. All right. Here we go. Chapter 7. So, the engine is quit. It's not working, and they're heading down toward the falls. Okay, there could be trouble. I guess we're going to find out if there is, if there isn't, what's going to happen in this chapter. And let me tell you from experience, a lot happens in this chapter. So hold on tight and turn your listening ears on. Here we go. Chapter 7. Clint tried to restart the engine. Charge on the batteries good, he muttered. It should be starting. I checked our speed against the trees that stood above the ragged ice lining the riverbank. We were drifting faster than I would have guessed on this flat water. All I could think of was the falls, and all I could hear was the falls and the groaning starter. Within a couple of heartbeats, I went from worried to terrified. Raymond and I exchanged glances as Clint tried the starter again and again. Could be vapor locking, some air in the fuel line, Clint said, thinking out loud. Could be trouble with the screen or maybe the fuel injectors. Could be electrical. Hang on. Keep cool. We were drifting, completely helpless, as Clint kept trying to restart the airplane. He had his left hand on the ignition switch, while with his right hand he was trying to adjust two levers at the same time, one with a black knob and one with a red one. In the midst of all that, he was changing the frequency on the radio and hitting the talk button. Mayday, Mayday, this is Cessna 67Z Ray at Virginia Falls on the South Nahanni River. I've landed on the river, engine out, floating toward the falls. Mayday, Mayday. This is Cessna 67Z Ray at the Virginia Falls, engine out. Mayday, Mayday. Clint turned to me and blurted, even though I hadn't asked. Somebody might have heard us. We're not sure that the radio's broken. I kept looking downstream, checking the distance that remained between us and the beginning of the gorge where the white water began. It was deathly quiet again inside the airplane. Suddenly, Clint said, Gabe, remember that partition in the back of the plane right behind where we loaded the duffels? There's 2 canoe paddles back there. You and Raymond get out on the floats and paddle. Paddle real hard. I hesitated barely half a second, just long enough to catch a glimpse of his eyes. Go, he yelled, and grabbed the tie rope too. Scrambling past Raymond and his great uncle, I tore off my ski gloves and attacked the gear in the back, throwing it forward onto Raymond and the old man, trying to free up enough space to get at the partition and remove it. It was taking too long, way too long. All the time I was listening for the engine to catch, but all I heard was the starter laboring worse and worse as the battery weakened. I shoved the metal boxes aside, tore out the partition. I saw an axe and a rifle and a big pack sack. Now I saw the canoe paddles, further back, in the narrowing tail of the airplane, taped down under some cables. I jammed myself in there and tore them out. Raymond was waiting. He'd already removed his bulky parka. I threw mine off, then grabbed the coiled tie rope as I climbed onto the float on the left side of the plane. While I tied the rope to the struts, Raymond crawled up to the front of the airplane and dropped down on the right side of their float. We both knelt on one knee and started to paddle. Our strokes didn't seem to do any good. This is impossible, I thought, but I kept digging, and Raymond matched me stroke for stroke. The starter kept groaning, slowly, and stopping. The battery had to be about dead. Maybe we'd paddled the plane a little closer to the bank. It was hard to tell. I knew the engine wasn't going to catch now. All the while, the trees along the shore kept slipping by. Now we were drifting past the dock where the float planes tie up. "You're gaining on it," Clint yelled from the open window of the cockpit. He's just saying that, I thought. I kept paddling, and so did Raymond. I paddled until I thought my heart would burst. Above the rumbling of the falls, I could hear the choppy sound of the white water racing down the gorge to the brink. With a glance downstream, I saw the tree-lined riverbank ending where the cliffs of the gorge rose sheer from the river and started to climb. We're not going to make it, I thought. We kept paddling. I heard Raymond gasping for air. I was doing the same. It was so hard to move that airplane, and yet we'd cut the original distance to the shore by half. We still lacked 40 or 50 feet, though. Who knew how much time was passing? It felt like forever, and it felt like no time at all. Think about that sentence for a little bit. It felt like forever, and it felt like no time at all. That's kind of like... That's a difference, right? It felt like forever, and yet like there was no time passing at all. Explain that to yourselves. What does the author mean when he's saying that? What was Gabe feeling in that moment? Have you guys ever felt something like that? If you have, email me the situation so I can kind of understand it. Make sure to include details and why you were feeling that way. I know for me, there have been times when I would play softball that it would feel like, just waiting for a pitch. And pitches go so fast. But at times, it's like, okay, we're only down by 1 point. I need to hit this ball. I hope I can do that. It feels like this pitch is taking forever when all of a sudden I'm swinging the bat and hitting the ball. It's crazy. Now, of course, that's not as intense of a situation as Gabe and Raymond are in, but that's just one example of what I'm talking about. Okay? So think of your own example that you could send me and share with me. Okay? "Can you swim?" I yelled to Raymond, though I could barely manage the breath. "Sort of," he wheezed. "What about the old man?" "I don't know." With another glance downstream, I saw the end of the flat water approaching, like a near horizon. I knew we couldn't possibly get the plane to shore in time. 30 feet remained between us and the shore. "Gotta swim for it," I yelled to Clint. To my surprise, I found Clint stepping onto the float right beside me. He was wild-eyed, dressed only in his thermal underwear. "We need this plane and everything that's in it," he shouted. "You guys keep paddling and get me close. I'll tie it up." With that, he grabbed the coil of the tie rope, dove into the icy water, and started side-stroking for shore. He was swimming hard. We have a chance, I thought, if he doesn't lose a stroke. Keep paddling, I told myself. Just keep paddling. But I could see the cliffs rising just downstream. The current suddenly grew stronger. Much stronger. Not gonna make it, I thought. My mind lurched wildly in the direction of my father, trying to glimpse what this would do to him. A few seconds later, I felt the airplane tilt as it dropped into the first whitewater riffles. It felt like we were starting down a slide. I looked up and saw Clint struggling onto the ice along the shore, crawling on his knees. At last he was up on his feet and snubbing the rope around the only tree within reach. Too late? The plane was already onto the first choppy waves of the rapids. I caught a glimpse of Raymond's face, the whites of his eyes. He knew we were dead. He was looking downstream into the thundering maw of the rapids, where white water poured between ledges, surged into deep holes, and boiled against enormous slabs of rock. It was then I felt the tie rope go taut and seize the airplane. What I want you guys to do, I want you guys to look up the word taut. It is spelled T-A-U-T. Okay? Look up the word taut and write down the definition. I want you guys to memorize that and to use it in your vocabulary at some point this week, okay? I want you to challenge yourself. I think you can do it, all right? I was jerked off balance and lost my paddle, but I managed to cling to the struts as the plane swung like a pendulum against the shore under the cliff at the beginning of the gorge. Okay, so the plane is swinging like a pendulum. Now, a pendulum is found in clocks. It's the long thing with a circle at the end that goes back and forth, just like that. Okay, so that means that the plane, okay, it's tied to a tree. It's tied to a tree here, but it's going out, and it's still in the water, and the water is pushing it this way towards the falls. But because the tree is standing straight and tall and strong, it's pulling it back this way. But the water's taking it this way. The tree's taking it this way and this way. Can you see how it's kind of like a pendulum? Okay. In another moment, Clint was there, along an icy ledge, helping me and Raymond and the old man to safety. The next moment, Clint was inside the airplane, handing things out to us as fast as he could. From me to Raymond to the old man. Parkas, gloves, duffel bags, my day pack. Here came the metal boxes, the pack sack, the axe, the rifle, even the hockey stick and the electric guitar. Thank God we're all safe, exclaimed Clint as he regained the safety of the shore. We grabbed whatever gear we could and worked it up the ledge to the bank. We made a second and then a third run. The old man was surprisingly nimble on the ice. The rope to the plane was as taut as a bowstring and seemed as if it might break at any second. Clint said, "The airplane's in an awful lot of current. I'm afraid we're going to lose it. We've got to try get another rope on it. Find something else to tie to." "Do we have another rope?" I yelled, looking around. I sure didn't see one. "Look in that packed sack by your foot," Clint hollered back. I pulled the tent bag out of it, saw 2 sleeping bags in stuff sacks, a red wool blanket. "No rope," I reported. Clint didn't know it, but he was so cold after being in the river that his skin had turned purple. The wind was starting to blow hard, and it was cold, cold. Raymond and I pulled on our parkas and our gloves. "Get some clothes on," I said to Clint, but he ignored me. His eyes were on that rope, and he was trying to think. Clint was right. The rope was going to break, maybe real soon. I thought about what might still be on the plane that we needed. "The emergency transmitter," I yelled. "Can you get it off the plane?" "It's built into the plane, like I told you," he yelled. But he was thinking about it. I could tell. He said, "I might be able to get back in there and activate the switch." Clint stared at the rope, then at the plane. Suddenly, he looked up and gasped. "My God, the box of rifle shells. It's still in the plane under my seat. I've got to try and get back on the plane." "The rope, Clint," I yelled. "Look at the rope." "We need those shells," he shouted, and skittered back down the ledge, stepped to the float, and disappeared inside the airplane. I followed him down the shore in case I could help. Instead, with a loud cracking sound, the spruce tree that Clint had tied to broke loose at the roots. It wasn't the rope that broke. It was the tree. Raymond and the old man were clear of it, but that stubby tree was shooting my way, and I could see I was going to get brushed right off the ledge and into the river. I reached for the pack sack at my feet, then timed my leap as best as I could. The tree passed under me. Most of it. A branch tripped me up, and I fell hard. I swung around and saw the tent bag go into the river. Then I looked up and saw the tree sloshing through the waves, and out beyond it, the airplane already well downstream, with Clint standing there on the float and looking back at me. "Gabe, catch!" he yelled. Clint tried to heave the box of ammunition to me, but he was already too far away, and the box landed way short. "Clint!" I hollered back, but there was nothing to tell him to do. I stood there, frozen in place, utterly helpless. Over the roar of the white water, I heard him shout, "Sorry!" He kept looking back at us as the Cessna wallowed into the first hole and came out upright. So far, he was still hanging on, still looking back. Clint never tried to swim for it. On both sides of the river down there, it was nothing but sheer cliffs, with huge whitewater wall to wall in between. Clint clung to the struts, trying to ride it through as long as possible. I saw him lift his cap and wave it with his free hand while he hung on one-handed, like he was riding a bull, I realized. Then I heard him whoop as the plane rose up onto the first of the 2 roller coaster waves. Miraculously, the airplane was staying upright, but just before the rapids bent out of sight and raced down to the brink of the falls, the plane was swept against a boulder jutting out of the river. The Cessna crumpled like a toy, tipped over, and was swept away. I saw only the briefest glimpse of Clint being pitched into the whitewater, and then he was gone. "Clint!" I yelled. "Clint!" Raymond and I ran up the steep footpath along the rising rim of the gorge. We stopped at a bend in the cliffs and looked down to the brink of the falls. We saw nothing but an insanely tilted river plunging toward the brink, where it was all mist and roar and thunder. "Could he survive that?" I asked Raymond. "I don't see how," Raymond said. I felt as if every nerve in my body had been cut with a knife, as if what had just happened to Clint had happened to me. I said, "I don't think he could be alive either, but we need to go down below the falls and look." My mind was racing, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it. He must have family back in Calgary, I thought. "It'll be dark soon," Raymond said. "It must be after 3 already." "You're right," I told him, checking my watch. "There's probably a flashlight and all that stuff that came off the airplane. You go down and look for him. I'll try to bring a flashlight so we can find our way back." Raymond took off running, and I headed into the forest to stay well clear of the cracks in the rim of the gorge. When I was opposite the falls itself, I came out onto the ledges and looked down into the raging sheets of water, the roar and the foam and the spray. I could feel the solid rock beneath my feet vibrating like a tuning fork. It ran up through me. I felt my whole body vibrating with fear. Downstream in the painted canyon, there was no sign of the airplane, but it was hard to see down there through the mist. The day was dimming down so fast. I imagined Clint holding his breath, tucking himself into a ball, somehow pulling himself up onto the beach right below the falls where I couldn't see. But I knew I was thinking in pure fantasy. Back in the woods, I stumbled around in the frozen mosses until I found the footpath again. It led in switchbacks down a steep slope to the river below the falls. Above the ice lining the shore, it was all rubble down there. Nothing but river rocks coated with transparent ice and drift piles of slick logs I'd seen from the air. I worked my way upstream toward the falls, which now loomed right in front of me. I kept concentrating, trying to spot the red and white colors of the airplane. I kept thinking I'd somehow find Clint alive on the shore, but I knew that I really was looking for a body. I slipped and crawled the rest of the way to the falls, as close as I could get, where the thunder deafened me, and the spray made the water run down the shell of my parka. Nothing. Not a trace of Clint or the airplane. Only the endless boiling of the river back on itself before it raced downstream. It was getting dark. Numb, I turned back, slipping on the rocks. I saw a flashlight coming down the last few switchbacks from above. "Find anything?" Raymond called. "Nothing," I called back. When we met at the foot of the slope, I said, "What now? What about us? What's going to happen to us?" "All I know is we gotta make a fire, and we gotta do it quick." Raymond was shivering uncontrollably. "You won't believe how cold it's going to get," he added. He turned and started walking up the trail on the steep switchbacks. I followed, trying to keep close to his light. "Do you think somebody might have heard Clint's mayday?" Could have, Raymond said doubtfully. Well, if his Mayday didn't get through, then we have to hope that the emergency transmitter he told us about is working. Maybe he got it turned on. Maybe hitting those rocks set it off. Are you kidding? Raymond said, stopping to look at me in disbelief. The whole thing's underwater. Look at the falls. Don't you remember what he said about how it works? The antenna and all? The plane would have busted up and got smashed over and over against the bottom of the river. That antenna would have gotten broken off. This river, it chews everything up. Maybe it worked for a minute or two, I said, grasping at straws. Maybe. Raymond shrugged and started up the trail again. Over his shoulder, he said, if somebody heard the Mayday, or if the transmitter worked, we'll know in a day or two. They'll rescue us real quick. My heart was beating so fast I was afraid I was having a heart attack. I steadied myself against a big rock along the trail. Wait up, I called, trying to catch my breath. People will know we're missing. My dad, your parents. Who searches for missing airplanes? The Royal Canadian Air Force and the bush pilots. And how much do they search? A lot. Tomorrow we can get a real smoky signal fire going. Do we have any food? I didn't have time to look. Let's find out. Man, it's getting cold, I said. This must be the Arctic air that Clint was talking about. I stumbled on a root and went down hard. I picked myself back up. I can't believe this happened, I mumbled, catching up. We're in a world of trouble, Raymond. Yeah, you got that right. That's the end of the chapter. Jeez, talk about a lot happening in a chapter, right? Clint's gone. The plane's gone. The old man, Raymond, and Gabe are all trapped, right? The Arctic wind. Winter is coming. It's nuts how this book goes. Okay, so the question today is asking you to go back through. Now, this is when we had books in our hands to go back through the chapters 5, 6, and 7 to find hints about. Gabe just said we're in a world of hurt. So you're looking to find clues in the other chapters that would prove that they're in a world of hurt now. Okay? So I recommend going back through, maybe listening to my videos again. Or if you know the answers already, awesome, perfect. If you want to work through it with me, we can do that during office hours, all right? I think that's about it. Yeah, check back tomorrow for the next video, and I hope you are having a good day, good night, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you are watching this. All right, peace out, guys. Love y'all. Bye.